Business sees complexity as pain and complexity as cost, and cost is obviously one of the big burdens we're trying to eliminate here, but at the same time trying to kill a bunch of birds with that stone. Standardization offers more flexibility. You have a great deal, great number of opportunities to, for one, build a more standard and homogeneous platform, but also a more flexible and open platform at the same time. Service quality you can definitely improve. I think we've seen virtualization and those types of technologies go from the lab to really the bedrock now of a large portion of production applications moving forward. We all want to be environmentally conscious, and corporate social responsibility is certainly on every board's agenda, but ultimately that's about cost, and until we can make that green match the other green. The IT initiative I always break down into people, process, and technology. I like to talk about the three segments and sort of how it impacts them. Certainly your IT shop, you have people, certain skill sets, process, your governance, whether you're an ITIL shop or ITSM, or whether you have no process whatsoever. Whatever the case is, there's some sort of even ad hoc processes going on. And then, of course, all the myriad of technologies going on in your data. Some of the things that are barriers in the facilities. Certainly we have legacy hardware, an immense number of dependencies. If any of you have tried to undertake a move or even move an application, let alone move an entire data center, you understand how many dependencies there are. If you might have to do application mapping, that's a fairly complicated process. There are a number of process barriers. You need to, again, the planning and design up front is important. Having the right architecture, something I touched on in the presentation earlier, how important it is to look at your storage network and compute and your physical facility architecture all together, not as separate. The network and storage designed properly, and it's really an enabler for growth within a virtualization platform and some immense cost benefits, cost savings, both capital and operational expenses. And then people. I think as far as how people think, there's to some degree a fear of a forklift and a major platform change, and what does that change means for a business, even if you're not moving, even if you're just retrofitting your existing data centers and you're making a technology change. The CFO is the first thing they're going to ask is, well, why? We just bought all this stuff, and just may have been yesterday, it may have been 5 years ago. We all know how that goes, or 7 years ago, how that goes with the tech refresh cycle. But it's still a consistent theme that nobody wants to forklift. They're saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if by broke you defined it costs more than it should, then it is broken. You do need to fix it. And the opportunities are here to do that at a really good cost scale. You're going to move data centers. Do you have the skill sets? Do you have the head count to do it? Do you have the people, the time to the right people, the time to focus on it? Is that something from a project management perspective, your IT or your project management, your PMO organization is ready to take on one of those initiatives? So physical facilities, I usually break down anything we're doing in there to either you're moving, and these are overlapping, right? You're either moving, consolidating, or transforming, and transforming is pretty broad. Consolidating, I've seen an awful lot of that the last couple of years. How many of you have been through over the last 3 years, any type of consolidation efforts, either between data centers or within data centers? So pretty good show of hands. There's a lot of things that fall under that umbrella, right? But it's all the same to the CFO. It's you're taking assets off the register, and you're spending less, right? The raw moves. How many of you have been through any significant data center move in the last 5-10 years? Wow, it's more than I expected. Some of the methodologies that we have specific around move. That's something that we've done a number of very large data center moves, and I'll dig a little bit into that, but some of the common themes across that are the project management and the really tight logistics and doing the prep work. And the prep work, we've often seen sort of not really a 10-to-1 ratio, but say at least 8 works of prep time for an 8-hour move. Sounds like a lot, but if you have a real logistically tight move window and you move a lot of production applications, within 8 hours, and if you've done that, you'd understand that is actually a fairly tight time frame. If you include application dependencies, all those sort of things, SLAs, keeping services up. There's obviously a million different approaches. We won't be able to cover all those today, but I'm going to take you through some of the top ones. So you said were you shrinking, or you were just consolidating data centers, but were you consolidating any, and that you were shrinking the footprint of certain services and applications down, like more virtualized servers, anything like that, or was it just a raw consolidation of facilities?
A little of all. We have an initiative right now to attempt to virtualize 120 new physical servers in virtual. And on top of that, we're also rolling out smaller machines in that we're very heavy blade and VM. So we're considering now moving our VM infrastructure also from rack mount to blade.
That's
right
great.
Now we're using IBM Big Iron, and it is turning out to be more efficient for us to use blade than the big server.
Oh yeah. What kind of, like, how many core blades are you using, if you don't mind me asking?
They're the HS22s.
Okay.
Two processor quad core machines.
Great. And that's going to, next year there's going to be 8 core, and it's just going to keep ramping up from there. I'll give you an example. Well, one, actually, that's the example we already covered. I'll give you the second example. There's a customer that, for certain reasons, was looking at the possibility of moving to a new data center facility, and the main driver was space. There was a little bit of afterthought to cost, but the main driver was space. And ultimately, during that first phase, they decided that they weren't going to move. They were just going to retrofit what they had, and they didn't really base that decision on anything but not wanting to make a drastic change or forklift and not taking the risk, as opposed to how much it was going to cost them to stay. And to make a long story short, the conclusion was that it made far more financial sense to move and make that change than to try to retrofit. And actually, it was impossible to do what they wanted to retrofit that data center. There's just nothing you could do and harden it enough. It was in certain storm zones and such in that geography. It just wasn't doable. And ultimately, if they had made that move a few years earlier, the terms on the data center, they would have saved a few $1 million, and that was certainly not insignificant to them. And I think that what they took away from that is that, again, the planning and the forethought, but looking at all the different pieces together and deciding what that technology roadmap is. And that's something I just try to stress pretty often. What's that technology roadmap? And oftentimes I'll see siloed within organizations. The storage group has their technology roadmap. The network guys have their roadmap. The server guys have their roadmap. The facilities guys have their roadmap, and it doesn't necessarily all get pulled together except at the executive level. And that communication really needs to happen all the way down to the engineering level. Have any of you experienced anything similar to that in any way? Okay. To share what the CFO had said after that, he really wished that we'd had a chance to talk about that. It's about 2 years ago, and he said he wished we'd talk about 4 years sooner. So yeah, it's like 6, 7 years ago. Wish we'd talked about 4 years sooner about that initiative and been able to make those changes. And I know that to look from some of your faces in the reaction to asking that, it was not popular, and usually people don't respond to that. It was not popular within IT, but with the executives, it was important. It was a differentiator for their business and allowed them to grow and meet some of their competitive challenges, and that delayed them in doing so. Now, they're doing fine now, but I think they recognize this. They would have been in a better market position had they had capabilities to expand more at the time. It's an interesting lesson learned.